when my daughter's wealthy mother-in-law offered me an allowance, right there at her dinner table. The whole room froze. I didn't shout. I simply pulled out a card that made every smile disappear. That was the night power, quietly changed hands. The story was only beginning. My name's Coraline Hester, and at 68, I still balance my own books better than most folks balance their lives. I wake up to the same creaky knees and the same Ohio sun that slides through my kitchen blinds. My duplex is small, red brick, sturdy, the kind of place that minds its own business. Tonight, I've got a pot of bean soup bubbling low and an old gospel station humming through the static on my radio. The announcer's talking about a church bake sale and a thunderstorm coming in. My life moves at that rhythm, steady, predictable, quiet. People assume quiet means broke. Not me. I've been deliberate my whole life. I patch my sleeves, pay cash, keep every receipt in a labeled folder. I don't need much, but I like knowing what's mine. I used to run corporate payrolls for men who couldn't count their own bonuses. Poor is a mindset, I tell myself, stirring the beans. Quiet's a choice. I never won the lottery. I just learned to keep ledgers, on paper and in people. That's my habit. Some folks gossip. I keep records. After 30 years in finance, I retired with more than a pension. I've got quiet equity in a couple of projects, including a hospitality group out east. Lucian Creer, an old colleague, still calls when he needs something balanced right. That's why I make more consulting in a month than most people do in a year. But no one in my family knows that, not even my daughter. When people smell money, their tone changes. They start using polite voices and shorter hugs. I thought hiding my wealth would protect the love between us. Turns out, secrets are just another kind of wall. My daughter, Rowena, built her own life out in California with her husband, Grant. She's 36 now, always posting those golden hour photos, wine glasses, ocean views, a dog that probably costs more than my car. I don't judge her for liking nice things. I raised her to reach higher. But lately, when she talks about being self-made, I can't help but flinch. If she started from nothing, what does that make me? Less than nothing. She never tags me in her posts. Thanksgiving, Christmas, her wedding anniversaries, they're all edited like I don't exist. Her friends probably think I'm gone or living on her allowance. It stings deeper than I let on. Funny thing about lies, I whisper, wiping my hands on a towel. They start as thread and end as rope. The phone rings just as I sit down with my bowl of soup. Her name flashes on the screen. I smile before I answer, but the sound that comes through isn't warmth, it's performance. "Hey, Mama," she says, that soft PR tone she uses at work. "Grant's parents are hosting a dinner in Connecticut next month. They'd love to meet you. It would mean so much if you came." Her words are wrapped in sugar, but there's a stick underneath. "Could you maybe wear something nice? They're traditional. Keep conversation light. No money talk or work stories, okay? Just be sweet." I stop stirring. "Be sweet," she says, like I'm a child who needs manners before dessert. I don't argue. I've lived too long to wrestle with tone. I tell her, calm as ever. I can be there. And just like that, she's relieved. Not happy, relieved. When I hang up, I sit quiet. The soup's gone cold. She didn't ask if I could afford the ticket. She just assumed I'd need help. That's how far she's rewritten me. To her, I'm the mother who can't keep up. But in my head, I could buy her dinner twice over and still tip well. I stand, rinse my bowl, and start packing my old travel bag, the same one I've carried since '94. Inside go the essentials, a navy dress that still fits, comfortable shoes, and copies of every contract that bears my name. I tuck a photograph between them, Rowena at 6, toothless and smiling, her face pressed to mine. That's who I'm traveling for. That little girl once looked at me like I hung the moon. By midnight. The house is dark except for one lamp. My bag's by the door, keys on the counter. I look at the photo and say, she thinks I'm coming quiet. Then I smile, small, but certain. Let her think that. The drive from the airport to Greenwich felt like entering a movie someone else was starring in. The streets were lined with trees so neat they looked combed. Houses hid behind gates and hedges, quiet but loud in the way wealth always is. When I stepped out of the cab in front of the Vaughn residence, I could smell cut grass and new paint, the scent of people who have staff for both. The house was all glass and stone, the kind that says, money lives here without saying a word. I straightened my navy dress and smoothed my jacket, holding the same leather travel bag I'd had for years. I whispered to myself, they built this to be seen. Let's see who's watching. As I walked up the stone steps, one of the catering staff appeared, holding the door open like he was saving me from getting lost. Ma'am, catering goes around back, he said. He didn't ask my name or purpose, just assumed I belonged with the trays. I looked him dead in the eye and said, I'm here as a guest. My voice was steady, polite. No tremor, no heat. He blinked, confused, like his brain needed a second to rearrange the picture in front of him. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Staff entrance is on the patio to the left, he insisted, lowering his voice. The family's already inside. Translation, you don't belong at the front. Before I could answer, the front door opened. Rowena stood there, perfect hair, polite smile, nerves buzzing under her skin. She heard it all. She saw me being waved away like I was the help, and she still said, It's fine. Mom, we can just go through the side. I didn't move for a moment. I wanted her to feel that silence, the kind that cuts sharper than a yell. All right, I said finally, and followed her around to the side entrance. I didn't argue because sometimes letting people show you who they are is better than reminding them who you are. Inside, she whispered fast, like she could control the damage. Mama, please, they're just particular. This family's old money. I've worked hard to fit in here. I smiled thinly. You've been working hard to fit in, I said. Or working hard to forget you came out of me. Her face tightened. It's complicated, she said. Mirabelle is sensitive about appearances. That word again, traditional, always the shield for prejudice. So, I asked, you want me to pretend smaller so you can stand taller? She sighed, whispering, just tonight, okay? Don't talk about work or money. They don't like that kind of energy. I thought. Funny how talk about money only becomes tacky once a black woman earns it. We walked into the sitting room where Mirabelle Vaughn sat like she was auditioning for the role of Grace itself. She wore cream silk and pearls that probably had their own insurance policy. Coraline, sweetheart, she said, stretching out my name like honey over glass. We're so delighted you could make it. Rowena's just been such a blessing, taking care of you like she does. My smile froze. Taking care of me, she said, and Rowena didn't correct her. Grant hovered, chiming in. Yeah, she's amazing with everything back home. Such a giver. They were performing charity, and I was the exhibit. I answered with short phrases. I manage. I do all right. You learn to measure your words when people are weighing your worth. I noticed the glasses next. Everyone drank from tall crystal stems. Mine was shorter, easier for you to hold, dear. Then the napkin, embroidered names. Mirabelle, Silas, Rowena, Grant. Mine said Caroline Hester. Wrong name, wrong spelling, wrong everything. "We had them made last minute," Mirabelle cooed. "We weren't sure if you'd be able to make it, dear. You know, with your situation." I could feel Rowena shrinking beside me. She wanted me quiet, grateful, invisible. But I didn't come all this way to play broke for anyone's comfort. I smiled and said, "It's sweet of you to think of me inside," I thought. "You're decorating me in pity and calling it grace." I excused myself to wash my hands. In their marble bathroom, I looked straight into that perfect mirror and told my reflection, "You're not sitting through this meal pretending you belong below anyone." I fixed my hair, adjusted my jacket, and breathed deep. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was calculating. I checked that my card was in my purse, my name, my power, my proof. "You can't rewrite a woman who keeps her own receipts," I whispered. When I came back out, they were already taking their seats. The long dining table gleamed under a chandelier that looked like frozen rain. My place was at the corner, far from Rowena. They'd set the stage exactly how they wanted, me in the shadows, them in the light. I smiled and sat right where they placed me, because sometimes, baby, the best revenge starts from the smallest seat in the room. They sat me at the far end of that long glass table, like I was a decoration that didn't fit the room. My chair wasn't beside Rowena. It was tucked neatly in the corner, far enough that I couldn't interrupt anyone's comfort. That told me everything about where I stood in this house. My napkin sat on the plate. The wrong name stitched into it, Caroline Hester, and the thread was lighter, cheaper, thinner. You don't get 4 names perfect and miss the 5th by mistake. They wanted me to see it. They wanted me to know my place without saying a word. I caught Rowena's eyes. She saw it, read it, then looked away. That's when I knew this wasn't a slip-up. This was a story she'd helped them write. Mirabelle sat straight backed across from me, pearls shining, a smile fixed. "Is the chair comfortable for you, dear?" she asked. Her voice dipped in sugar. "We weren't sure what you'd be used to." The table laughed softly, polite laughter that burns more than cruelty. I smiled back, small, steady. "It'll do just fine," I said. Inside, I wasn't shocked anymore. I was cataloging. Every word, every glance, every calculated insult disguised as kindness. All of it went into my quiet ledger. Mirabelle leaned in, folding her hands. "It must be so hard being on your own at your age. Coraline, do you manage okay?" Her tone was almost tender, but the question wasn't. She wasn't asking out of care. She was performing generosity. "Rowena tells us she's been helping you quite a bit. She has such a generous heart." That was the moment my daughter's lie became public record. I saw Grant nod proudly, like her charity made him noble. I said calmly, "I take care of my own bills. Always have." My voice didn't rise, but my words were clear enough to cut glass. Mirabelle gave that tiny smile again, the kind rich women wear like a veil. Of course. But if you ever need a little help, don't be shy." The whole table froze in that soft, dangerous silence. If I said thank you, I'd be needy. If I said no, I'd be rude. I looked her right in the eye and said, "I'll keep that in mind." What I meant was, I see what you're doing. I told the audience inside my head. That's what I call a polite dagger. It's how folks cut you in public and make you say grace for it. I turned to Rowena, gave her a chance to stand up for me. "Rowena knows I'm fine," I said. "She knows I've always been fine." Her smile twitched. "Well, Mom," she said, laughing light and false, "it's okay to accept help sometimes. Nobody's judging." But she was judging and enjoying it. That's when I felt the shift. This wasn't her being nervous anymore. This was her protecting the image she'd built, the one where she's the savior, and I'm the charity case. I thought, Lord, my own child is selling the story of my weakness to buy her approval. They kept talking, small and sweet, all while handing me little reminders of my supposed place. My glass smaller, my plate set slightly apart, my name stitched wrong. I slid that napkin into my purse, quiet and deliberate. I wasn't stealing, I was keeping proof. Old women don't argue every bruise, I told myself. We save the bruise, then show it when folks pretend they never hit us. Silas Vaughn watched me closely from the end of the table. He said nothing, but his eyes lingered. That silence meant something. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt. Either way, I noted it. Then Mirabelle said, Rowena and Grant are committed to making sure you're okay. We believe in taking care of those who have less. Those who have less. The words floated in the air like perfume laced with poison. I leaned forward and said quietly, Less what? The air changed. Fork stopped moving. Grant's grin froze halfway. Mirabelle blinked like I'd just spoken in another language. I let the silence expand, heavy and sharp. You could feel the table's heartbeat skip. She didn't answer. Nobody did. I smiled and took a sip of water. Inside, I told myself. Next move they make, I answer out loud, because I was done swallowing their version of me. The night had just changed sides, and they didn't even know it yet. Mirabelle folded her hands like she was blessing me. Coraline, dear, she began, voice soaked in honey. We really don't want you to struggle. Silas and I talked, and we'd be more than happy to set aside a little allowance for you every month. Just something small. 700, maybe 8, just so you can be comfortable. The word allowance hit the table like a slap wrapped in lace. She didn't ask if I needed it. She declared it, right there in front of my own child. That told me she already had my story written. The poor, aging woman, grateful for scraps of rich people's kindness. Comfortable was her way of saying contained. Grant nodded like it was a solid business deal. Rowena's fingernail traced slow circles on her wine glass. She didn't speak, didn't defend me, just kept her head tilted, performing shame without courage. I let the silence stretch. I've balanced books, fixed payrolls, paid other people's mortgages, and helped raise kids that weren't mine. I have worked for every dollar I ever held. And here she was, breaking out $700 like it was a leash and calling it love. So I asked, slow and level. 700 to do what exactly? Her smile cracked. Just a hairline. Oh, sweetheart, she said, laughing light. Just bills, groceries, little things here and there. We don't want Rowena and Grant to worry. There it was. The truth dressed up in pearls. This wasn't charity, this was control. She wasn't helping me, she was helping them avoid the guilt of having me. My daughter stared at her lap, pretending the linen pattern was fascinating. I looked straight at Rowena. You been telling these people I can't take care of myself? Her head snapped up, and I saw it. Panic. Mom, she whispered, this is not the time. She looked toward Mirabelle like a child glancing at the teacher. That small gesture told me everything. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting her place at this table. Grant tried smoothing the air. We're all family here, he said with that fake laugh men use when they're terrified of women's silence. To me, it sounded like, stay small, stay grateful. I leaned back, folded my napkin. Just so we're on the same page, I said quietly. $700 is what I make in about 3 hours. The room froze. Forks stopped midair. Rowena's mouth opened. No sound. Mirabelle blinked like she'd swallowed ice. Silas, quiet, deliberate Silas, leaned forward, reading the name on my card when I pulled it from my purse. I laid it right beside that misspelled napkin. "This is mine," I said. "That number doesn't bounce." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The logo on that corporate card said more than I ever could. Mirabelle's confidence cracked for the first time. Her eyes darted to Silas, whose brow furrowed like he suddenly remembered where he'd seen that company name before. Rowena looked stricken, not proud, not relieved, panicked, because if her poor mother turned out to be solvent, then her whole polished image of generosity fell apart. She had built her reputation on my supposed weakness. Mirabelle tried to recover, smiling tight. "Of course, dear, you don't need to posture. We just want you to feel secure." I smiled right back. "Oh, I'm secure," I said softly. "Always have been." Silas's gaze lingered on me, thoughtful now, almost wary. For the first time, I saw awareness flash across his face. Not sympathy, recognition. He knew my name, and he knew exactly what that card meant. I met Mirabelle's eyes. "You've been telling a story about me," I said, calm as glass. "I think it's time I tell mine." I picked up the card I'd left on the table. The light caught the embossed lettering. My name. My company. "This isn't a vanity card," I said, voice steady. "It's tied to my consulting firm and my equity account." I paused on that word. Equity. It wasn't just a paycheck. It was ownership. I could see Silas understand the weight of it. The rest of them looked like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "I make about $55,000 a month," I continued, "on a slow one." I said it the way you'd mention tomorrow's forecast. No flex, no apology. "So no, I don't need an allowance. I never have. What I do require is respect when you talk about me." The air tightened. You could have heard the chandelier hum. Mirabelle tried to recover, smiling like a hostess fighting a cramp. "Oh, Coraline, you don't have to posture. We weren't insulting you," I cut in, still calm. "You offered to put me on a monthly allowance in front of my child. That's not kindness. That's paperwork." She flinched, just slightly, but enough. "We were only trying to help," she said. "No," I told her. "You were trying to define." The word landed like a gavel. Grant looked from her to Rowena, realizing this little charity tableau was collapsing in real time. He'd thought he married Florence Nightingale. Turns out, he'd married a woman who built her glow off someone else's shadow. I met his eyes. "Your wife hasn't been wiring me money," I said. "Your wife's been wiring herself a story." Rowena's face went white. "Okay, can we not do this here?" she whispered, voice cracking. "I just said you were struggling on a fixed income. That I helped you sometimes. I just wanted them to respect me." There it was. Naked truth, trembling in designer jewelry. I said nothing for a beat. Then, softly, "And you thought I wouldn't hear about it?" Her eyes filled, but not with remorse. That wasn't guilt. That was exposure. She was crying because the curtain was gone, and now everyone could see who'd been holding the strings. "Rowena," I said, "you built yourself taller by making me small. I carried you for 9 months. You think I wouldn't recognize the shape of my own silence?" Grant reached out like he could smooth it over. "We're all family here," he said weakly. I turned to him. "You keep telling yourself that," I said. "Families don't draw lines in fine print." That's when Silas finally spoke. "Mirabelle," he said quietly. "You didn't recognize her name?" The table froze. "What are you talking about?" Mirabelle asked, her voice sharper now, the mask slipping. Silas pointed at the card. Coraline Hester is on the Connecticut hospitality portfolio, the one our firm's been leveraging. The silence that followed was heavy enough to tilt the room. Mirabelle's eyes darted to me, then back to him. The woman who just offered me pocket change was realizing that her social standing rested, in part, on something tied to my name. Her face drained color. The pearls around her neck suddenly looked like a choke chain. And just when I thought the air couldn't get tighter, May Whitcomb stepped forward from the staff side, refilling glasses. She stopped mid-motion when she saw me. "Ms. Hester?" she said, eyes wide. "Oh my God, you're here!" Everyone turned. May smiled, glowing. "This woman paid my tuition," she said, loud enough for every person at that table to hear. "I wouldn't have finished school without her. She believed in me when I had nothing." The look on Mirabelle's face, shock trying to rearrange itself into grace, was worth every quiet insult I'd swallowed that night. May didn't look at her once. She looked at me. Gratitude. Pure and public. Rowena's hands trembled. I could almost hear the story she'd built about me crumble. Brick by brick. I stood, slow, deliberate. I folded my wrong name napkin, placed it next to the card with my real one, and said, "Dinner's on me." I handed the card to May, not to Mirabelle. Respect is earned, not inherited. Then I turned to Rowena. "Don't you ever write me that small again." And I walked out, leaving their silence sitting there like unpaid debt. I didn't storm out of that house. I simply stood, folded the wrong name napkin in half, slipped my card into my bag, and walked. Quiet feet can echo louder than a shout when the truth's already been spoken. Behind me, chairs scraped. Rowena's voice cracked through the air. "Mom, wait!" But I knew that tone. She wasn't asking me to stay because she was sorry. She was scared of what it looked like to lose control of the scene. Her wait meant don't leave me like this in front of them. Grant muttered, "Babe, calm down," as if the storm was mine to contain. He didn't even look my way. And that's when I realized something that settled deep. I wasn't leaving a family. I was leaving an audience that thought they were the director. They hadn't lost me. They'd lost control of the story. I walked the hallway lined with smiling faces that didn't include mine. Every photo was Rowena and Mirabelle at luncheons, charity galas, wine tastings, not one frame with me in it. You don't forget your mother's face by accident. You erase it on purpose. In the foyer, I reached for my coat. That's when I heard Silas's voice. Not Mirabelle's, not Rowena's. Silas. His shoes hit the marble with intention. "Coraline," he said. First time he used my name like it wasn't just sound. "I didn't realize you were tied to that Connecticut property deal at that level." I turned. "You've all been eating off numbers I helped build. Your wife offered me grocery money." His jaw flexed. He wasn't angry at me. He was realizing the social insult had business teeth. "Mirabelle didn't know," he said finally. I met his eyes. "She didn't ask." That was the truest line of the night. He nodded once, respect without warmth. Then he said quietly, "For what it's worth, I'll make sure this gets handled." I smiled. "Don't bother. I already am." Then Rowena appeared, mascara streaking like rain before I even reached the door. "Mama, please," she sobbed, grabbing my arm. "Don't do this. You're making it worse." "Worse," I said. "Baby, they called me Les, and you nodded." "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "It was exactly like that," I replied. "I was there." She broke then, blurting, "I just wanted them to respect me. And you sold my dignity to buy it," I said softly. The words hit both of us. She reached for me, but I stepped back. I couldn't let her hug me just to tidy optics. Love doesn't cancel consequence. I turned the handle, stepped into the cool Connecticut rain. Not heavy, just enough to wash the air clean. The stone steps shimmered under porch light. I walked down steady in my navy dress, leather bag at my side, heels clicking against wet stone. Each sound said, "Mine. When you're my age." I told the audience, "You learn walking away isn't weakness. It's saying, access denied." A black sedan waited at the curb. My car service. I booked it myself. I didn't need their help getting home. Rowena's voice called again from the doorway. "Mama, please don't leave like this." I didn't turn around. This is exactly how I leave. I shut the car door. That sound, clean, final, felt like closure. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, glanced at me in the mirror. "Rough night, ma'am?" "Not rough," I said. "Educational." He chuckled. That small, ordinary moment reminded me I was still part of the living world, not trapped in anyone's version of me. As we drove, I looked down at that napkin. The misspelled name stared back. Caroline Hester. I smoothed it across my lap, the thread fraying under the cabin light. I decided to keep it, not as pain, as proof. Proof of what I survived without apology. I still love her, I told myself. Love doesn't quit. Trust just clocks out early. I leaned back, exhaled, and pulled out my phone. One contact lit up the screen. Lucian Creer, the man who handled my contracts. "If they thought tonight was about dinner," I murmured, "they're wrong. Tonight was about paper." I pressed call. The rain hit the windows like applause. The morning after, Ohio felt like a different planet. I unlocked my front door, stepped into my brick duplex, and the quiet hit like balm. Same coffee pot, same wooden chair by the window, same neat folders of contracts on the table. The world they mocked me for not having was still mine. I laid my leather bag down, smoothed that wrong name napkin, Caroline Hester, and set it beside my mug. I looked at it the way lawyers look at evidence. You keep proof not for bitterness, but to remember where the line was crossed. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and rain. I brewed my coffee, the AM radio murmuring an old gospel tune. Nothing in my real life had changed, and that was the point. They could insult my name, question my worth, but they couldn't touch my peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the pull to apologize for existing. Silence in my house wasn't lonely. It was earned. Before 9 a.m., the phone rang. "Rowena, no, Mama, are you home safe? Just, I need to talk about last night before it gets out of hand." Out of hand, like I was a fire she needed to contain. She said Mirabelle was humiliated, devastated, that I'd embarrassed her in her own home. Not a word about what Mirabelle said to me. Not one. I let her talk. When people rush to defend someone, you learn who they're scared of losing. She wasn't defending me. She was defending her seat at that table. When she paused, I said evenly, "You don't talk to me like a PR problem. You talk to me like your mother, or not at all." That landed heavy. She exhaled, small and irritated. "Mama, it's not like that," I told her. "It's exactly like that." Then came the lie I'd waited my whole life to confront. "I love you," I said, "but I'm not going to shrink so you can look tall. You don't use me as your charity story ever again." She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "If someone asks about me, you tell the truth. Tell them I work. Tell them I'm fine. Tell them I don't take allowances. And if you can't, baby, then don't bring my name up at all. Act like you're an orphan." Her breath hitched. "Don't say that. I already lived through you saying it with your actions." I replied. That silence between us was the sound of a boundary locking into place. Later, she told me what happened after I left Connecticut. Silas didn't yell. He spoke in numbers. "You embarrassed a stakeholder," he told Mirabelle. That word, stakeholder, landed colder than any insult. He reminded her that my name was tied to the same investment their wealth leaned on. Mirabelle, proud as stone, refused to see it. "She disrespected my table," she'd said. Silas answered, "You can't afford to treat partners like props. That's the quiet threat, not rage, but realization." I could picture Rowena sitting there, realizing the fallout wasn't emotional anymore. It was financial. People like Mirabelle hate two things: exposure and consequences. She'd earned both. I told Rowena, "We can still talk, but you don't ever put me in a room with folks who speak down to me again. If Mirabelle wants to talk, she calls me herself, and she calls me to apologize, not perform." "She doesn't apologize," Rowena murmured. "Then she doesn't speak to me," I said. "That's not cruelty. That's adulthood." I also told her, "You watch that husband of yours. A man who will let his wife parade her mother like a pity project will sell your dignity, too. Just wait." She didn't argue, and that quiet was confirmation enough. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table again, coffee warm in my palms. The napkin lay there like a warning label on history. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't doubting myself. For the first time, I wasn't applying for my own child's approval. Respect had become rent, and I'd finally charged it. Yes, the hurt was still alive, but beneath it sat something stronger: relief. I hadn't let them rewrite me. I hadn't carried their lie. I'd walked out whole. Then came the knock at my front door. I glanced through the peephole, not Rowena, Mirabelle, standing there in pearls and heels, rain on her coat, eyes sharp as ever. I whispered to myself, if she came across state lines to my doorstep, she brought either war or surrender, and I'm ready for both. When I opened my door that humid Ohio morning, Mirabelle Vaughn was standing there like a misplaced magazine ad. Pearls, pressed blazer, and the kind of shoes that never met gravel. She wasn't there to apologize. She was there to contain damage. "We need to talk about what happened last night before it escalates," she said, eyes darting past me like she could see headlines forming. I didn't step aside. I just looked at her until she remembered courtesy. "May I come in?" she asked. That was the first real correction of the day, her asking permission to enter a house she once dismissed as modest. I led her to my kitchen table, the same laminate surface I've had for 20 years, 2 mugs, a little off-brand creamer, gospel music humming low from the radio. She sat stiff, like she was afraid humility might stain. She started right in about liability and reputation management. I raised my hand. "Before you speak another word, you're going to call me by my correct name." She blinked, caught off guard. "Say it," I told her. "Coraline Hester." She said it, quiet, like swallowing a pill. In that small sound, balance returned to the room. Then I began. "You told me I don't have to worry. You said you'd set aside a little allowance. You told my daughter you were looking after me so she and Grant wouldn't have to carry the worry." She tried. "That's not how I meant it." I cut in. "That's how you said it." Her eyes flickered. I leaned forward. "You weren't offering help. You were positioning me beneath you, in front of my child. You turned generosity into hierarchy." Her lips tightened, but she stayed silent. That's what truth does when it lands right. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. The Fairfield County hospitality deal. My contract printed plain. You see this section? I said, tapping the line marked Hester Goodwill and Participation. That's me. The goodwill you and your husband profit from. Her throat moved, but no words came. If I feel mishandled. I continued. I can withdraw participation. Translation, I can pull my name and your comfort out of circulation. She stared down at the paper, pearls trembling against her throat. I said, here are my terms. You don't ever call me less. You don't use words like dependent, allowance, or looked after. You don't turn me into your charity ornament. You will not use my name to build Rowena's halo. Do you understand? Her yes came out small, but it came out. That's when I knew this was over, not by emotion, but by contract. Then I looked her in the eye. Now we talk about my daughter. I raised her, but you trained her. You will not coach her to lie on me again. You will not reward her for calling me weak so she can look loyal to you. You will stop using her hunger to belong as your leash. Mirabelle tried. Rowena's an adult. I nodded. Exactly. And adults pay for what they do. You included. I laid it flat. Rowena knows she doesn't put me in those rooms again unless I say yes. Whatever social play you two run in Connecticut, don't count on me sitting there pretending peace. That production's closed. If my name is used for pity again, I pull my goodwill, and you can explain to Silas why his bottom line just shifted. Mirabelle's voice softened to something almost human. Silas says I embarrassed us. Not you. Us. Reputation first, heart second. I didn't answer. I just let the quiet sit until she felt the weight. Finally, she asked, are you pulling out of the Fairfield contract? I met her eyes. That depends on how I'm spoken about. Not in front of me, behind me. And then I told her, I don't need your table. Your table needs me, and let's keep that straight. For a long second, she just sat there, pearls still, lipstick trembling, a woman unaccustomed to standing on level ground. Then she stood. Thank you for your time, she managed. You're welcome, I said, and I meant it. Education isn't free. After she left, I sat with my coffee. The room smelled like rain and paper. I took that old napkin, Caroline Hester, and folded it neatly one last time. I didn't throw it away. I kept it as proof of who I used to let rewrite me and who I chose not to be anymore. You don't have to yell to take back your power. Sometimes you just say, that's not my story, and mean it. I'll always love Rowena. I'll still cook for her if she visits, but I won't play helpless again so she can feel generous. That costume's retired. They tried to label me small. I walked out in the rain and wrote my own label. Money fades. Dignity, don't. So tell me this. Who's been rewriting you smaller so they can stand taller? And when are you going to stop letting them? As I poured a second cup of coffee, a faint knock echoed again. Softer this time. Hesitant. Through the curtain, I saw a familiar silhouette that wasn't Mirabelle. My heart paused. Rowena, her hand hovered midair, unsure. Was it apology or another plea for control? I whispered. Round 2.